can also see it. All right, so thank you so much, everyone. Great to be with you all today. My name is Jesper. I'm joining in from Norway, and I have my 5-year-old daughter in the next room, so she might pop in and say hello and ask me something. Let's see. And we're hosting this together with Andy, and Emma is doing tech support. So thank you all for that. So thank you for coming for this briefing on assembly-based movements to overcome fascism. So this is a collaboration between Revolution 21st Century, Assemble in the UK, and Resilient Uprising, and we're all part of something that has no name yet. It's just called a new network, which we'll get to in a moment. So just an overview before I hand over to Andy, who's going to speak about kind of the broad reasons why we're here. Andy's going to speak about where we're at. I'm going to speak about this new network that I just mentioned. Andy's going to speak about some case studies on assembly-based and other forms of building resources and constituency for building the resources to actually be able to have a go at and counterweight the far right. We're going to go into small groups for about 10 minutes, maybe a bit more, to get to know each other and to reflect on what has been shared. And then we're going to share about some upcoming trainings that's going to be happening, which are both happening in a time zone that we think works well in Australia, and also another one that is in Europe. And then lastly, I'm going to speak about a conference that we're going to have in September. So thank you so much, and over to you, Andy.
Oh, where's my slides things? I must admit, yeah, a little bit frazzled. Just came from a picnic, a neighborhood picnic that I organized with my housemate on our street. 200 flyers, door knocked the street, met about quite a lot, probably 60 people plus, and had 50 people come to this picnic. So that's kind of a little slice of what we're going to cover today, I guess, is, this concept of praxis, getting out there and doing stuff, iterating from that point, and creating connection, creating community, and then, seeing where that community can go, or having a plan for that whole process. So briefly, just to introduce myself, because there's many people I don't know here. I've been my relevant maybe history is getting involved with Extinction Rebellion in 2019 after doing a master's and just seeing climate crisis or climate coming up again and again, and realizing this if humans procrastinate, we're never going to address this issue. So I learned about civil disobedience and got very involved in organizing, giving talks and stuff like that. Then I helped co-start this other project, Fireproof Australia, which was a good learning experience in praxis and trying something as part of the A22 network. And in the process of that and being involved in other projects in Australia, I've ended up being put in prison 3 times, which has been part of the journey, I guess, of being in resistance to a system that is trying to kill us. But then more recently, I was 3.5 years in Lismore in the Northern Rivers because, as people may have been aware, in 2022, there was this catastrophic flooding there. And this was a chance to go and learn what a climate disaster is actually like, what is the reality on the ground of this experience that I'm trying to help society avoid. And in that context, I learned again different layers of the shit show that is our current society and the way government and corporations dominate regular people, and how our democracy isn't a democracy and it's very non-consensual what happens to communities all the time. Um, I just want to acknowledge, we're here in this call about the rise of fascism and in the context of many of the poly crisis. Um, and we're probably all, I'm sure we are all doing really great work. And just want to take a moment of gratitude for you all for being here, for caring so much, and for putting so much effort into things which I'm sure nobody's getting paid to do, and you're doing it because you're called to do it and you think it's the right thing. And I guess this isn't about getting stressed out about the context we're in. It is a moment to just also know that we are trying. Um, And yeah, for those in Australia and those not in Australia, it's kind of part of our culture these days to contextualize things in terms of colonization. Because we are a colony, we live in a place that had a very brutal genocide against the traditional custodians, the indigenous people here. Um, and where I'm living is called Wurundjeri land, and Waran is the name of a tree, the manigum, and Jedi is the name of a little grub. And so these people, as Bruce Pascoe pointed out, had the humility to name themselves after a grub in a tree. And maybe there's something in that humble interconnectedness to nature that we need to move towards to imagine a culture and a way
Yeah,
of being that can survive and thrive on this planet. Um, so when this talk sort of happened last week, and there's this like scene setting of the context, which is kind of a bit depressing. And I guess we could sort of like skip over that, but it is also sort of worthwhile to just touch ground on what we're facing. And even though we all come at the present moment from different positions of like benefiting from colonization or not, um, we're all actually very much in it together. And I was looking at something Tyson Yunkaporta wrote, which is like, he says, most of us, regardless of ethnicity, will probably be in the same boat when it comes to the end of the world. And I think that's kind of important to recognize. And I think we're sort of facing the end of the world. One, the fossil fuel industry. We're on track for 2 degrees of warming. There is this report from the Actuaries Club of the UK or whatever, like the insurance body, and they're acknowledging their 2 billion deaths. So that's the people who, the insurance industry is kind of on the forefront of acknowledging what's actually happening. But yeah, 4 billion deaths ultimately. But in this thing, it says 2 billion, which is the start of the existential extinction crisis for humanity, or it's the start of the global genocide of the global south. And both of those things will keep us up at night for our whole lives if we don't do something, do what we can about it. And the other context that you're probably aware of is this thing which is like, what is an existential threat on top of an existential threat? I don't know if other people are thinking this, but the artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, the intelligence that's, no, super intelligence that's smarter than all of us and we can't even know what it's thinking thing is very much happening with these tech feudal oligarchs in a, um, what's it called, an arms race to profit and imprison, and maybe the machines will just kill us all. And it's for me been a real kind of like experience of existential experience, seeing this, um, fathoming this at this point in time, which really leads to these big questions. How do we live now? What is important? And what are our obligations? Like what is really the point of much if this is the future or the present? So And then these other questions have kind of emerged regarding, the efforts of the climate movement, which is like, what do we have to show for our efforts of the last few years? Um, and this big question of like, will we get to a society that is congruent with the reality that we are in? I'm not sure. Hopefully people joining tonight are getting a feeling of being with other people who see the world maybe in a similar way and care similarly. But I think there's a long way to go for us to have a society that sort of acknowledges what situation we're in and is maybe working together on it. But I think that is what we're on the cusp of getting to, and that's kind of what this call is about tonight. So we're facing massive ruptures, whether it is the huge unemployment caused by artificial intelligence in the very near future, whether it is the food crisis caused by the super El Nino and the fertilizer shocks, whether it, is massive climate disasters. We're definitely going to face huge ruptural moments. And the two scenarios that could happen from there is really the rise of the far right and fascist states, the far right taking control, or something else. And the main argument here is that we need to make sure it's not the fascist takeover. And that means we kind of need to provide, so we need to structurally do a lot to avoid that scenario. And part of that is also going to be providing a positive vision of what our society can look like, a reinvention of our attempt at democracy and honoring and embracing of Indigenous people and ways and knowledges. A different world is definitely possible. And it's going to get a lot worse if we don't do something about it. And I think the important point, probably people here have a much better understanding than me, but we're in a situation like in the 1930s in Europe, in Germany, in which the analysis really of like Trotsky and that was that the communists didn't provide an alternative way. Communists being pretty much like the movement ecosystem at the time, they didn't provide an alternative path for the people who were really suffering under the crisis of capitalism at that time. And instead, people went towards fascism. And we had massive, massive horrors there. And unfortunately, if we don't do something really well, then it's terrifying to think of what the future holds for us. But um, this new network is about concretizing around three main strategies. And the kind of main point is like things can't be done in isolation anymore. So, Emma, if we could have this slide up, we are going to get into sort of more details of this later on. But it's basically to cohere around mutual aid, campaigns, and also elections. And all of these things really center around listening to people and meeting the rest of people in our society, getting out of our bubbles, and um, bringing people together in pro-social ways that are not typical of the last period of sort of neoliberal organizing and left politics. And the main so these are the kind of the three pillars. And the main point, I guess, is that these systems need to reinforce each other. So I think it's kind of a bit hard to imagine because it's not necessarily in our collective consciousness at this point in time, but it's like campaigns on issues like data centers or housing are leading energy into the assemblies that are running independents in elections or parties that are in alliance working together, really pro-social parties. And at the same time, as the crisis continues to hit, the mutual aid projects in response to the climate crisis and other crises are also reinforcing together. And it's only through like a real synthesis of a whole bunch of these timelines are we going to be able to build the mass popular movement with the people to counter the far right. Um, so this is sort of like touching on this briefly, but the new international network has a pretty great little essence document, which we'll put in the chat as well. And we're going to touch on some more tangible examples of this later on. But for now, I'm going to pass to Jesper to tell us more about the international network.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's so good. It's been so good to get to know what you've been working on in these, yeah, since I got to know you some years ago now, and just that we have different people who are understand each other and who are working, trying to solve the same challenge in different areas and thinking about it in different ways, and then we can kind of compare notes to what we're doing and then learn from each other. So this is really the kind of learning environment that we need at this point. So thank you so much. So just briefly mentioning a few words about myself to since so we can all get to know each other. We're not just the issues that we're working on, we're also the people who are being here, and that's really important. So I became involved through a civil disobedient direct action in 2019 when Extinction Rebellion started here in Norway with a main focus on building like internal capacity for social movements. Since 2020 has been my kind of seeing what I can most contribute with. And then I co-founded Resilient Uprising, which is a training center for social movement leaders within this line of working in 2024, where we focus on organizing high quality trainings, getting peer network, and also mentorship from movement elders, people who have a decade or more of experience in the field. Um, so I'm from Sweden, but I'm based in Norway since many years, and have had the fortune to collaborate amongst others with Andy and Margie in Australia. And maybe Andy, you could post a link to Margie's yeah web page also about that would be great because she's really contributed a lot also. So this session is has come together through this new international network that Andy mentioned, and it came about with people from UK, Italy, Germany, Australia, and many other countries. First, through like Andy said, and I just mentioned about Extinction Rebellion was an entry point for many of us, and another network which was called it's called the A22 network. And then since 2024, a handful of people from UK and Italy primarily has been asking like, what have we learned since 2019? And what kind of models do we need to use these learnings to build actual material power and other resources we can really contribute to the revolutionary social change that we need over the next 5 to 10 years? And in December last year, we thought that we had a solid enough analysis to be able to share it with more people. And since then, there's been about 60 people, activists and organizers that have been involved in face-to-face sessions and online about gathering strategic principles and creating a constitution. So I'll just repost those things here. So what is the purpose of this international network? So for those who were there last week, then it's a good review of that. So the first point is moving to focus on material power. Like my experience with what we did in Extinction Rebellion was we did a lot of shape goals. We tried to shape the public's understanding of what was going on, and then try to build towards win goals, making policy changes, and that's good. But we also need to do much more of the build goals, where we're actually building constituency, we're building ongoing relationships with certain demographics of people, we're building tangible resources, funding that can really be, and not just going for the symbolic media power, which is important, but without the basis, it doesn't really make that much sense. So with material power, what we mean with that is owning resources that can help people in difficult situations, and we can build a long-term trust that really changes society over time. So in Italy, what they're going to start up in September with the project called Ultima Generazione, they're going to do a mass divestment campaign against banks that invest heavily in fossil fuels and weapons, and then getting masses in the public to reinvest those money, to give them to the ethical bank in Italy and to mutual aid organizations. So one can build up the resources that the movements really need in order to have a chance, even at making something um, that is good, and then using those money to get more people to work in the neighborhoods and do more of the listening campaigns that Andy will come to in a minute, where you can really build that constituency and those relationships, and not just stay in the kind of self-selected group of people who are already kind of radical and aligned with the agenda. Because if it was sufficient to just have the people who are already kind of aligned with that, then we would have seen change already. But that is not the case. So we really need to go outside of our kind of the people who agree if we're going to make something good. So the second point is to not just with the Extinction Rebellion and some of the later, it's been really focused on civil disobedience, but we also need to move to more mass non-cooperation campaigns, because mass cooperation, then you have a much higher ladder of engagement where people who are never going to go into an action, who is never going to risk arrest, can also contribute and be part of that. And this was in 2023, I had several calls with Paul Engler, who wrote This is an Uprising. I'm just seeing if I have the book here. No, yeah, here it is. Yeah, actually, it doesn't have the cover, so it doesn't make any sense to show it. Anyhow, Paul Engler and Ivan Marovic, who has been kind of some of the people who have been thinking a lot new about how to do grassroots organizing, and what their analysis was also what people within XR, Extinction Rebellion, and 822 network should really do is to have a much wider ladder of engagement, have much more different ways of not just kind of catering mainly for the people who's going to be doing actions and get arrested and do potential jail time, which is important, but it's really narrowing kind of how people can be involved. So this is the second point. And the third point is to create what is called dual power, like people actually building those constituencies, going into popular neighborhoods and mobilize the issues about things that are really important to them. And like I mentioned, in Italy, what they're going to try to do, because Southern Europe is really on the front line in the European sense in terms of the heat waves, and really all of that, and to build maybe climate shelters or heat shelters and stuff like that. So those are just some examples, and then we want to learn from what we're doing in different areas. And with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Andy, to speak about some case studies. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I won't speak for too long because we're gonna have breakouts so people can have a chance to connect and stuff. I guess some exciting case studies or experiences. I might just talk to my own experience recently, briefly, which is there's an area in the north of Melbourne where they plan to build a waste to energy incinerator. Um, and I went to within 2 kilometers of the proposed site and just door knocked the street the other day. And, you know, 8 people, 8 houses, 5 people were at home in the middle of the day, and three of them, no, what was it? 3 people, 5 of 5 people, two had heard of the incinerator, and three of them were keen, like quite interested to come to a meeting if we were to have a local meeting about it. So this is a case of like we already know that there's an issue that people kind of would be very concerned about. And so it's a bit of providing information, but at the same time, it's very clear that people would also be keen to come together. And so another example is the data centers. So around Melbourne, they're building a lot of data centers around the whole world, and people are organically going out there and door knocking and meeting people and stuff like this, and starting to form resistance to these projects. Um, and similarly, this is just this massive, massive opportunity right now. Probably always, though. No, that's the point. It's actually, regardless of whether there's something happening, this is the process. It is meeting people at their door to get away from the self-selection bias that Jesper mentioned, and bring people together in a way that is empowering and enables groups to start to act together. Because this is one of the things in our society at this point is people A, don't have the time, and B, don't know how to make change very well. But the first step is bringing people together, and it's about sociability. So this isn't going to the door and telling people a bunch of things. This, in this context, there might be some information to inform people, but then it's about listening. Like, how is this going to affect you? Are you concerned? What else is going on in life? And I think this is the most interesting thing for people to recognize is when you ask people what's happening, there is issues that people are facing. The cost of living crisis is really impacting a lot of people, and this is the chance to work together. One example of this methodology, is a recent experiment in the UK in the suburb, in the area of Brixton, the working class sort of area in London. And there was this project to door knock where they door knocked about 8,000 houses, and they used the door knocking to, or maybe 2,000, to find out what the local concerns are, which was basically housing. And then they organized assemblies on housing, which brought in hundreds of people. And there's kind of the micro design of putting up posters of the timing of the event, but then creating a social space that is about people talking and listening together in small groups. And from these processes, what they did is have public meetings and nominations of people to become candidates for like their local council wards in the elections. And I guess what's really important about this process is that it's very transparent and it's happening intentionally in areas like that are more working class, and that in comparison with the Greens Party in the UK, which has had a pretty significant rise lately, the demographic of the people that came to these assemblies and nominated to represent their communities was all migrant people, and majority were like, or maybe they were all working class people, and the majority were migrants as well. And I think this is kind of important because I know Rob's here from the Community Independent Project, and there is the Voices of movement in Australia, which has kind of challenged, I guess, the party political system a lot. But there's something for where that process is happening and where it's not happening. And I think it's not really happening in working class areas and empowering people who aren't normally getting represented. And that's sort of where the magic lies, because it is in the masses of society not being um, listened to that our power is. Um, yeah, and I think this um, recently also been experimenting. So there's this really important concept of iterating and just praxis, getting out there and doing something. But we have door knocked our street 200 houses in a kind of middle inner north privileged area. But the interesting thing is still, if you door knock every house, say good day, we chatted to about 60 people. It took about 7 hours. We have 50 people coming to a local picnic on the Sunday. And from there, it's sort of like this mutual aid stream of the pillars that we talked about before. What do people need? What do people want in their community? And I think I think this is it's giving a lot of information about, how much time it takes to get 50 people to an event. This can be experimented on in other areas. But at the same time, I think what we fundamentally have to recognize is like that privilege and having a good house and a good life and having free time to do fun things and all this stuff really is like in exchange with the need to be in solidarity with people that aren't in that same situation. And um, I think this thing of bringing people together in communities on their streets in certain areas already enables us to to, as a collective, act in other circumstances. So talking to a woman today, I was saying about the data centers being built in the West, and then she was like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty concerning." And you can really contextualize it because we're in a park opposite houses, and in a nice park, but in these other suburbs, there opposite houses is a massive data center. And so even bringing people together in a park and being like, imagine if they wanted to turn this into a data center, that's exactly what's happening over there. Maybe we should go on our Saturday and do some door knocking over there and help that community organize and be in solidarity together with them. So yeah, this is a little bit of experimenting. Um, and yeah, I don't know, is there anything else, uh, Jesper, or should we go to the breakouts?
I think it's high time for everybody to get to know each other and reflect on what we've been speaking about for the last 30 minutes. So, um, yeah, if Emma, if you could set up the breakouts, and then we have maybe we can give a few 14 minutes so we have a bit more time, or 13 minutes plus and the ending of the group, and yeah, and maybe we'll put, if you can manage this, maybe as we can have one, if you make an extra room, and then we can have Esther's, your four group people with one other person. So you have actually time to get to know somebody else, but not be too many people in a room. That would be awesome. So whenever you have time, Emma. All right.
Jesper, hi.
Hello, everyone. So I hope you had a good time in the breakout rooms. I'm sure I know I had. It's always so good to get to know more people who are doing the work to move forward. So now we didn't say it in the beginning, but this call we originally scheduled it for 1.5 hours, but we're gonna do it for 1 hour. So we're just on the end of it. So now I'm just gonna speak a bit about the upcoming trainings that is happening, and then about a conference, and then how people can be more involved and work on these. So Emma, would you be able to find the links for the upcoming trainings with the overview page? That would be awesome. I forgot to put it in the notes. We're gonna on Sunday, August 16th, there's gonna be like a crash course on how to run assemblies. What are the things you need to do? What's the role of it? The key things to think about, all of these good stuff. Like, it's going to be like a one-stop shop to get introduced and speed up to that. So that's happening on August 16th. And we're going to have one which is the same time. I think it's about the same time, which is in the afternoon in Australia, in the morning in Europe, and then one in the evening in Europe. So we're going to have two times that day. And then on the 1st of September, we're going to have one about on the same times, one in the morning in Europe, which is in the afternoon in Australia, and one in the afternoon in Europe, about how to set up an independent election campaign based on assemblies that Roger spoke about and Andy mentioned. So those are two things that we're doing, and then we're going to have a conference in September in Europe, probably in Germany. We're still exactly where we're going to be. So there's a form if you want to be attending that, and then if you want to get a bit more sense of a longer kind of explanation of the theory of change or some of the elements of this new network. We have a recording from March this year, where we had a gathering in London, where Michele from Italy, he speaks and compares it to kind of what the MAGA system is doing in the US and the different elements of that and how they really set up a big um, ecosystem for what they want to do, and then yeah, what do we need to do? So let's see. So we have 6 minutes left. I think I'm just going to speak a bit about the conference, and then we see if we have, yeah, and then we'll probably move to closing. So in terms of what's happening next, it's super important that everyone who isn't having a project on the go is really tries to do something, and that's why we're doing these trainings and trying to create a pathway where people can engage. Um, and the most important is just like having this big picture in mind while doing local activities, like we've been speaking about Daniela in Italy, in conversations about what Andy is doing on his street, and in other parts of Sydney, and what I spoke about the people in Leipzig are setting up. All of this is really, really good, and doing the kind of listening projects is a really good place to really understand what's happening in your neighborhood. And that's going to be the training on the 16th is really getting you up to speed about all of that. So the second thing, which is really important, is once we have done these trainings, which is just, it's an introduction so we can start working on things. We are going to meet other people, and in September when we're going to pull together and like learn from each other what different models people are trying out in terms of setting up mutual aid or building the social fabric in their area, and then connecting that to the bigger global struggles and the tech oligarchs and the different things. And one just piece of good news is we have a major crisis. There is funding. Some of the people in Revolution 21st Century earlier this year, they managed to get £500,000 for the work that they've been doing around mobilizing around getting civil getting citizens' assemblies to decide on uh, how AI should be regulated. So there is some good track record for getting funding, and in September there's a plan to do another big fundraiser and hopefully raise another £500,000 to do something similar. So it's not just about we have some good ideas, but there is people who have been successful in doing big fundraising, uh, and so we can really create the solid infrastructure that we need. So, so you don't need to feel like, okay, now I go away from this call and we have our little group and a little project. But what's really important is that we combine what we're doing, and then also when going to these big funding calls, when you have an array of different projects going together, then that's much more what we need, and where the people who are giving funding also is really wanting to see. Is there any, would love to hear, Andy, if you have any last words you want to say before we close?
Um, just that, yeah, I think it's very exciting to think about the reinforcement of systems. And I know there's like a lot of big issues out there, like Michelle in our call talking, and people are at the anti-nuclear proliferation conference in Adelaide at the moment in Australia. Um, and I think it's kind of exciting to think how big issues like that tie into, you know, what somebody thinking about and struggling with at their door right now as well. And it's sort of like probably, yeah, it's fascinating, but we have to join forces to create a social alliance that counters the far right. Okay, a nice big, we're all on the same side, reinforcing system. And this point about going for like funding as whole systems or whole visions, I think is very, very interesting. Like this is how this part reinforces this part reinforces this part. Give us some money to make that happen or to support that happening. Thank you. And also last week, this session kind of happened as well. And Roger Hallam spoke, and Sam from Assembly spoke in the UK. And that was very, very cool to hear directly from about the Assemble project because they've run hundreds of people's assemblies. They generated an agenda for a national citizens assembly, which they self-funded and did the sortition to make happen. And then that assembly gave, some top directions, policy directions, and then they started a street movement, or a street movement called Take Back Power was started about the tax the rich kind of key recommendation of the assembly. So, yeah, I put the link in the chat. I know that we've posted a lot of links, but that recording is really good, and we're just trying to humbly do one at a time where people can, because I went to it at 4 a.m. and understandably no one else in Australia was there. So hopefully this is just an attempt at bringing us together with this exciting vision. And thanks for coming.
Thank you everyone for coming, and we're on time. So if everybody can unmute and then say goodbye in their native tongue, that would be awesome to hear everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Ha det bra.
Good evening.
Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.
Anhui people.
Two things.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, German friends.
Bye, Wes, and everyone.
G'day, Michael. Good to see you, buddy.
Roy had an Adelaide half an hour out glitch.
Oh, is that what happened? Yeah, the old Adelaide. Forget about that.
I remembered and everything, and then as soon as I started, I thought, "Oh no, it's not 6 o'clock yet."
Ah, well.
Nice to see
that's
you,
right.
Margie.
Cool.
The recording's cool.
See you soon. Bye.
See you.
Bye.